Orphans who didn't get adopted. What happened and how is life now? I went into foster care when I was 13 and eventually aged out. I was in about 12 homes between the ages of 13-16. It's not easy to place a teenage girl. I'm white and 10 out of my 12 families were black. My state, I'm not sure if this is something that is done everywhere, had an annual Foster Child of the Year award. You get nominated by social workers and foster parents. When I was 16, I was nominated and won. Got to go to a big banquet, met Stedman Graham, was given $1,000. Anyways, after I won that, I was placed with a very nice family who I stayed with until I was 18. Always thought they would adopt me, but they never did. I'm 28 now and I don't talk to any of them anymore. Now, I own my own business. I'm getting married in 2 weeks. I made my own family out of friends who I celebrate holidays with. Sometimes I feel left out when people are talking about their childhood and the things they did growing up. I've had rough patches. I get lonely. It'd be easy to get bitter. But I know how much life can truly suck. And I'm grateful for every day it doesn't. You know, this might sound weird, but for those of you desperately seeking family, try visiting or volunteering at retirement homes. Many of the people there are just as lonely. So I was never adopted. Grew up in 4 different gov homes and then was going to be kicked when I turned 18. I was in school and the military was always showing up doing those recruiting booths. I joined the Air Force and have been in 19 years now. Found my own family and really proved the phrase blood doesn't make family. I have been to 7 continents and over 24 countries. I have to tell you, retirement is scarier than those days as a kid. I wasn't an orphan in the sense that my parents were dead, but neither were capable of caring for me. At age 13 I was forcibly removed from my mom's care. She lost physical and legal custody of me and my siblings, and I was placed with family. My grandparents had temporary custody of me until my mom was fit to be a parent again. Problem was, she never got her act together, so I remained a ward of the state with legal guardians until I graduated high school. I wish I was put in foster care with strangers. Then, at least, the neglect, abuse, trauma I experienced would be more understandable. But the way I see it, it must be easier to treat strangers poorly than your own flesh and blood. If I was living with strangers, I wouldn't have taken it all so personally. It's been about 13 years since my family was split by the courts, and in this time I managed to graduate from high school and college, have a few relationships, albeit failed ones. I have a kid who is pretty awesome, and 8 years of therapy to show that I've made some positive progress emotionally. I ultimately hope to work with families who are impacted by addiction and mental health, which is what split my family, to connect them with resources and built emotional psychiatric resiliency to cope with these problems. I believe I've stopped the cycle of abuse in my family. I want to help others stop the cycle too. I believe I've stopped the cycle of abuse in my family. I want to help others stop the cycle too. This is profound. I was effectively raised in a big facility for kids. They didn't have room for kids too damaged by abuse the system to be out and about. These days I'm mostly upset about what it did to the continuity of my education. My past ruined my future. And the only girl I've ever loved doesn't want me, because I'm a mess, and it just kinda kills me every day to know I'm so disposable, an auxiliary person. I think because I've never had a stable family or been accepted anywhere, I put a lot more value in human relationships than other people, and time after time I've learned I'm not worth it to the rest of the world. It's weird because I've always been reasonably intelligent, and done well in school, so all the things most people really value have come easy to me. I'm working on grad school, will get a doctorate. I play the bass guitar. I've traveled a bit, but all I ever wanted was to love and be loved, and it just feels impossible. All I want is something everyone else just seems to have. I still watch everyone go to their parents' houses for Christmas and Thanksgiving and I've got nowhere to go. I've graduated college with no one there to cheer me on. I'm just getting tired of exerting myself when, truthfully, no one really cares. When I was being hurt growing up, I always felt like it was something to rise against. I always knew I could forge a future for myself with education, get a good job, and love someone in a way no one's loved me. These days, though, at 30, I just feel like I missed the boat, and I'm tired of the miserable world I live in. Not trying to be creepy, it's probably 500% creepy, but I saw in your post history that you were having a hard time and living out of your car. It was 5 months ago, but I just wanted to see how you're doing now. If that's still the case, I'm in the PNW also, and just want to make sure you've got a good place to sleep tonight. I was in foster care, but was never adopted. I was taken away from my biological family at a young age, and from then on I only met them by appointment on a weekly basis for about an hour under supervision. I went from home to home being told directly that you are only here because you make us money, and if you were my real son, you'd be treated differently. When I would misbehave, my foster parents would threaten to call the agency and return me like some sort of defective product. During the summertime, I was sent to camp so they can get a break from me and spend alone time with their biological children. It took a mental toll on me and I lived in constant fear. The people I was surrounded with in my foster homes made me believe that anybody that interacted with me wanted to use me, and that led me to withdraw from everybody and isolate myself to be on the safe side. I really only felt at home when I was in school. Things are better now. I am working on my PhD and I'm trying my very best to build healthy relationships with people, but it is extremely hard to open up when I've been hurt so much. When I see stray cats on the street that don't trust me to feed them, I feel I have a deeper understanding of why they act the way they do. My walk of life has taught me that all things are transient, but the best feeling that I've ever felt is love. If you have any children, give them a big hug and tell them you love them. It means more than you would ever know. Goddamn, some people suck. Glad things are looking up. I wish you the best. You deserve it. Both my parents committed suicide. My mother when I was 5, which put me in foster care, and my father later in life, when I was already a big part of the system. My sister and I bounced around a lot. My sister a lot more than I did. I ended up at 13 different homes. Some I would go back to. She ended up in a lot more. We were both very difficult and would test the foster families after the honeymoon period ended, and eventually it wouldn't work out and we would move on. The longest I stayed in one place was 3 years. After some physical and sexual abuse at a family, and a general disregard for my future, I was caught shoplifting and given community service, sent to a charity, and became a pretty big part of their fundraising. It was a super marketable story really. Got sexually abused by the founder, but carried on with life. Eventually got married, and had 2 kids. It didn't work out after 10 years, but I'm still doing my hobby from when I left school and work as a systems administrator. Life isn't bad. A lot of things I wish I did better. I struggle with a bit of baggage. I'm not sure how much of that is perceived and how much is real, but I'm doing much better than my sister, and I'm a relatively functional member of society, which is much better than I would have been. That was a roller coaster. I'm not a foster child, but my friend wasn't in middle school. I'll never forget. People were picking on her and she said to me, "It's okay that they make fun etc because my parents picked me out of all the other kids. They could have chosen another child but they picked me and I'm here at this school." We were at a private school that I took for granted looking back. IDK, that just kinda always stuck with me. There's something special I think about being adopted for long term. I was in foster care with relatives after my mother died but was never in the system per se. They kicked me out at 18 but I was eligible for a lot of benefits due to being a ward of the state my teen years. My aunt and uncle never officially adopted me. I struggled through college but I did end up graduating and have a solid job, a home, and I'm getting married in less than 3 months. Congratulations, you've overcome some astounding odds. I'm very happy to hear that you've found someone to share your life with going forward. I was in foster care, but I was never adopted. My first foster parents never legally adopted me, but we call each other family. They never were emotional and I constantly live in fear of being disowned if I don't finish college or maintain a Catholic lifestyle. Both motivating and depressing. Doesn't sound like family. I was out in the system at 10 years old when my dad killed my mom and then himself in front of me. I suffered emotional, physical, and sexual abuse from many different foster families and no one ever believed me. At 18 I was free and decided to help other like me. I am now a social worker for abused children and thank the Lord for every day that I am breathing. I was taken in by relatives. but never legally adopted. They raised me fine. And the only real issue is that I didn't have insurance between the ages of 18, when I was dropped from their plan for being an adult, and 24, when I had to purchase insurance for the ACA. If I was legally theirs, I could stay on their plan for another 2 years. Same exact thing with me, except I got insurance at 23 when I got a full-time job after college. I'm surviving. Not technically an orphan, but grew up in foster care. I have no family but my baby sister, who is now an adult and is surviving as well. I've always been like her mom, so we do holidays and things together with the so's we have at the time. Life is hard, especially when you have no one to turn to for help. Friends make it better, but I don't have any super close ones except one. My mom is still around, but not really as a mom in the sense of wanting to take care of us. Things could be worse. And as I type this, I look around to all of my fur babies and see all the things I own, and I feel grateful for what I have. If I know anything, it's that my life won't always be this way and things always get better. Another foster parent here. Even my toughest placement was so worth taking. I love doing it, even with all of its ups and downs, and it has made me passionate about foster care and children's rights. Thanks to you kind of people. I lost my brother, sister and my parents on one single night. That was the hardest period I had ever suffered. Even though the feeling was never the same, my foster parents had definitely got me through with their care. My mom was in 42 different foster homes, orphanages, etc. Mom never got adopted for 2 reasons. They would not split her and her psychotic violent brother up, and my sociopath of a grandmother would prevent anyone from adopting mom. If mom was getting emotionally attached to her foster mother, psycho grandma would find out and have mom pulled out of the home. Mom would tell grandma about nice foster mother during planned visits. Even though mom and uncle had 2 parents, they were still in orphanages and foster homes since their narcissistic mother and playboy father couldn't be bothered with taking care of their own kids. Mom turned out okay. Finally found stability in my dad, who loved and cared for her until the day he died. Now I take care of her. She's had such a tough life, and her strength shows. She came out of that traumatic childhood sane and able to raise a family. I was never adopted, and ultimately I go through life feeling unloved no matter who is around. I believe nobody will ever love me. Emotionally I'm all messed up, but professionally I'm doing well and physically I look good, so. Not me, but my father. His mother left him at Christmas time when he was 8. She said she needed black-eyed peas and never came back. To this day he gets sick looking at them. He grew up in an orphanage with his 4 brothers, moved to Nashville at 16 and went to a newly desegregated school in a horrible area of town. He was one of the first white kids in the high school. He graduated, went to community college and started a tree nursery farm. He was a racist alcoholic and was abusive in every way to the family. Then he had a wreck that the doctors say he shouldn't have recovered from. He's nicer sometimes and doesn't drink. He said he felt flames licking at his feet while unconscious. Now he has almost 0 short-term memory, sort of like Memento but not as extreme. He writes everything down in a notebook every day. His kidneys are failing now and he's not looking good. He's unmarried and bitter. I don't really like him or love him. I understand where he came from, but I can't just unfeel those early years and forget what I saw and felt. I think the only thing I feel for him is pity. I feel like crying just saying that, but I really do only feel sorry for him. I don't hate or dislike him. I just don't care either way. It's pity. It's pity that gets him a call at holidays and pity that makes me answer the phone. He has no one else on this earth except me, and he only has me because I pity him. I'm not an orphan but had to be put in care due to abuse and other things. Reading all your stories makes me feel like you are my family. We guys get each other, know what we went through and how fricked up emotionally we are now. Love you all. Whoa. Being adopted by a loving and caring family and reading most of your posts, I've realized that I might have taken all of this for granted. I'm going to call my mom and dad to tell them I love them tomorrow morning. I was adopted from orphanage in Haiti. Some of my friends that didn't get adopted have been sponsored by wealthy family in Canada. They said by 14-16. They are pushed out of the orphanage compound and into the real world. Some continued with education, but most try to find their way in a country with little to no opportunity. Some have moved to Dominican Republic for more opportunity. The ones that have been sponsored have spent the first 5 years learning the language and getting a job. Okay, so my parents both relented their rights, so I was a ward of the state, but I was kicked out of foster care at 20 because I got my own place and they saw that as being defiant. So I'm currently going to school for meteorology. I have a full-time job. I have my own car. I do suffer from depression, but I have ambitions and I refuse to be like my parents. I think I'm going great. As far as never being adopted, well, that was my fault. I was a very badly behaved foster kid, and I fricked up every chance I had for a family. I regret it now, but I don't let it hold me back. Finally, something I know a little about. I grew up in state care from about age 9 to 17. I lost my father when I was about 6 years old to suicide and I don't remember him much. My mom sort of went downhill from there. Drugs, bad boyfriends, the whole 9 yards. I went into state care and started my extended stay with the state. I bounced between about 12 different homes before getting myself stuck in a dreaded group home for at-risk youth. I quickly about pulled my crap together and applied to a private foster care program called Casey Family Programs. I finally got a shot at a little normalcy before aging out of the system. I now work as a software engineer and am doing pretty well, all things considered. Have a great relationship with my foster adopted family and even some halfway decent relationship with my birth mother. Today I'm doing good. Unfortunately, the little foster kid in the back of my head is always ready for things to fall apart. My ex was an orphan. She was taken from her drug addict mother and her boyfriend who sexually and physically abused her. He went to jail. Her and her brother and sister floated around in foster care until one of her therapists adopted her. She was about 11 or so when she was adopted. She went to Cal and did pretty well for herself. She is really smart and overcame a lot. Even though sometimes I think of her as a B, I will always really respect her. I was raised by various family members. I did a little time in a foster home. The subject of adoption never really came up. My mom's family helped me through college along with student loans. I teach English in China now and I'm looking to return to the US next year. Best part, my abusive parents had the decency to A. shoot himself in the head and then B. she died of cancer a year later. So honestly, I don't give too many shoots about their passing away. Well, but now, it was 30 years ago and it was a long road to get to where I am now. Wasn't a pretty one at times. I struggled a lot with being self-destructive, depressive, and all sorts of things. I still struggle a lot, but remind myself on a daily basis that crap can always be worse. Enjoy what I have now, and don't be crippled by thoughts of the past. Isn't always easy, but it often is all I got, so it has to do. Orphaned at age 14 here. Growing up was drastically different than everyone else I've noticed. I wouldn't say it was all bad, but the majority of it was crappy. I didn't realize it at the time. I'm 22 now and I have a really hard time making any actual connection with people, honestly. I find a lot of the time I have a difficult time feeling sympathy or empathy. Don't get me wrong, I do feel them, just not too often. For the longest time I resented people who had a whole family and especially the ones who hate their mom dad, but I've grown out of that now. I'd say I'm a mostly functional human being. I've done some fricked up things to some people. I am what I am and I'm always working on being a better person. Losing your parents sucks but I think comparatively I've had it easy. I'm not putting all the details in here because I'm busy, but if you have any questions I'll answer them. This is so weird for me to talk about because I've never really thought before about the fact that legally I don't have a family. My parents were not stable enough to raise me. There was drug abuse as well as sexual and emotional abuse going on, so I was sent around to different relatives until my aunt and uncle decided to take in me and my sister. But they never actually decided to adopt me, and I'm not sure why. Anyways, I ended up being sexually abused in that home too. Not to mention the fact that we would make frequent trips to visit my biological parents where even more crazy crap would happen. It's taken me years in therapy to realize how fricked up and abusive my family really is, and my entire life I felt like it was my responsibility to just deal with and not be a burden to anyone else by showing emotion. My biological parents both ended up passing away after I went off to college, so I guess I really am an orphan. I am still close to my aunt and my sister, and I talk to one of my brothers sometimes, but I feel like none of them have ever really understood what's going on in my life, and for some reason I'd like to keep it that way. I mean, I've literally had my brother tell me that I straight up shouldn't talk about the abuse I went through and that they don't want to hear any details because it's too sad for them. Anyways, I'm just thankful that I'm able to afford college and that I'm alive. My truth. I'm poor and dysfunctional. I watched my pops kill himself at a young age. Many people heard the story and thought I was damaged and didn't want to take a risk. I fantasized about anyone being a family, even to the point I wished a pedophile would take me. Not that I wanted to be molested, but what's the difference from being raped by other kids at the foster homes and being raped at a perm home? It's almost 3 AM. Where I'm at and I am drinking as much as I can in hopes a toothache goes away. I'm lost and will never find my way. I'm 35 now and it never goes away. I'd like to say that anyone in this thread who fits this, or even if not and you just have no one, lives in South Carolina, me and my wife would live to invite you to holidays, or heck, even just a barbecue. I grew up without my dad, and my mom hated me because I was her first, and after me her life went downhill. I know what it's like doing everything for yourself, and not having a family to sit down and eat and talk with. Everyone deserves that. Throw away for a lot of reasons. I was left at the hospital by my biological mother immediately after being born. She hadn't lined up an adoptive family, or even contacted an adoption agency. This was in the late 80s when the HIV/AIDS panic was high. While I was eventually adopted, there were a lot of babies in my situation who were not, because adoptive parents were fearful of adopting an infant if the mother's HIV status wasn't no. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.